Welcome to the Pink Megaphone podcast, produced by Life by Leslie Media Corp. This is a space where women choose themselves with courage, calm, and clarity. I am Dr. Leslie. Let's get into it. Hi, guys. So, welcome to episode 1 of the revamped Pink Megaphone podcast. I actually had this podcast back in 2020, but that was during COVID when I had lots of time. And as time has gone on, it kind of fell by the wayside, but I've been self-inspired to restart it. So here we go. So today we are going to talk about making ourselves a priority. And this is actually something that's pretty deceptively radical. That is making ourselves a priority. Many of us consider it to be selfish, or the outside world convinces us that is selfish. But when you think about it, prioritizing yourself can actually consist of some pretty small actions, but which result in some major changes in your life. So if you're exhausted, you feel like you give too much of yourself, if you're a people pleaser, even though you may not want to admit it, or you feel like your worth is defined by your to-do list, then for sure this episode is for you. So of course, I love one of the things about my work in this space is that a lot of it I can relate to. A lot of the struggles and concerns that I help other women through, I absolutely can relate to. So of course, I can relate to not making myself a priority. And that especially became hit home for me during COVID when I was working 3 jobs that were very, very demanding of me. Now, for those of you who don't know me, I am a doctor by profession, a palliative physician. Palliative care is the care of persons with life-limiting or very serious illness. So in addition to being very physically and mentally taxing, it's also very emotionally draining. So imagine me, I'm working as a palliative physician, and I also started working at our islands. I live in Barbados, our island's lone COVID hospital. And those shifts were 12-hour shifts. So I'm seeing palliative patients and I'm also working in a COVID hospital. And then in addition to that, I am also working in a general practice, seeing patients in clinic at least 4 times a week. So not much of my time was my own, and it took me experiencing physician burnout to actually realize that like something needed to change and I needed to start prioritizing myself. So what did that feel like for me? What was it in my body that told me not just that I needed to prioritize myself, but that I was in burnout? And it was constant headaches. It was stomach upset. It was sleep disturbance. And let me tell you, I'm a girl. I could sleep. Yeah. See that? Make sure you got 7 to 8 hours a night um, type thing. That's not a problem for me. But that became an issue. Um, Appetite, sometimes it's there, other times it's not. And then when it's there, I just want to eat junk because looking back on it, I just wanted to comfort myself. And what better way to comfort yourself than with sugar? Huh? So I also, felt very stressed all the time. I My muscles felt tight, constantly felt like I needed a massage, but who has time for that at that point in time? So those were the things that I felt. And as I said, I recognized that I needed to make a change. So one of the things that I did change was that I took a break from palliative care. And I absolutely had to because of all of the things that was the most demanding, I would say. It wasn't just physically demanding, physically going to see patients and what have you, but it was also very emotionally and mentally draining as well. So that was the one thing that I needed to put on the back burner. And it was not an easy decision, but sometimes the best decisions for us are not actually easy. Very often the best decisions for us are not easy ones at all. So I did that. The other thing that I did, which was a smaller step, but as I said, small acts, big changes, was to be more intentional about movement. So I made sure to find the time to exercise. Be more intentional about eating well. And eating well is not just eating the right foods, but eating at the right times, not skipping meals, being paying attention to my meal as opposed to eating while distracted, because that makes a difference. Paying attention to my water intake. So those little things actually made a difference. And also carving out time for myself where I could just not have to think about anything or anybody or their problems or anything like that. Just to be able to exist, whether that's for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes. That's when I really got into the habit of, disconnecting from my phone at times because that is so very important. So let's get into a definition. How would we define making yourself a priority? And I want you to think about that for a second. For me, making myself a priority means, first of all, recognizing that it's not selfish. And secondly, asking, what do I need today? What do I need in this moment? What do I need this week that I can do for myself? And making sure that that happens, regardless of what anybody else wants. And you may immediately be thinking about like really grand things, but I'm not even talking about big things like that. The thing that you may need is to go for a swim. So out of the 7 days in the week, can you find the time at least for half an hour to go take a swim, take a dip? Can you do that for yourself? The thing that you may need may be to take yourself on a solo date. So maybe that's what you need to do. So it's about thinking about, what do I need in this specific moment, and how can I give that to myself? All right. Okay. So there's some myths, very, very common myths out there that float around about when we're thinking about the subject of making ourselves a priority. One of them is that if I prioritize myself, that's being self-indulgent. No, it's not. It's being a human who cares about their own well-being, that understands that if you aren't useful to yourself, you won't be used to anybody else, right? Um, so you need to step away from this idea that looking out for yourself or doing something nice for yourself or prioritizing yourself above others, above the job, above the multiple people calling you who need you for things that they could probably sort out on their own or that are not urgent, but that they want you to feel are urgent. When you have other stuff on your plate going on, it's okay to set a boundary. A boundary is something that we'll talk a little bit more about a little bit later in the episode. But prioritizing yourself is by no means self-indulgent. I think what people also tend to think is that prioritizing yourself is, especially in terms of self-care, means that you have to book a spa day or book a trip somewhere or do something really grand and fancy. And while those things are nice, they're not necessary. Like, there are small, meaningful ways that you can prioritize yourself. Back to boundaries, I always say a boundary not enforced becomes a gateway. And what do I mean by that? If you don't set your boundaries and they become an open door for any and everybody to just tramp through and demand what they want, and you're going to be at their beck and call because they don't respect your boundaries because you haven't given them a reason to if you don't even enforce your own boundaries, far less set any, right? A boundary doesn't have to be about saying no or being, blunt or abrasive or shutting people down. A boundary just shows people the lane that they're not allowed to cross. So that lane could be, don't contact me about work after I've left work. That lane could be, don't expect me to respond to work emails while I'm on vacation or over the weekend or even while I'm at home at night when I'm supposed to be tucking my child in or having quality time with my partner. Those are boundaries. The same way that you may have a boundary with a child, for instance, that child knows that they can't speak to you any type of way, especially if you're from the Caribbean. That's a boundary. And you set that boundary and you enforce that boundary with the child. And most Caribbean children, at least in my generation, will respect that boundary because it's set and they know that there are consequences for not respecting the boundary. And when you set your own boundaries, you have to determine in your head what are the consequences that people will experience if they overstep my boundaries. And those consequences could be something as simple as just letting people know that you're wrong and I don't appreciate this and I'm not going to tolerate it in future. So it's not about you being a big bad wolf. It's just about you making sure that people understand how to respect you and you respecting yourself. So let's look at what are the real costs of not prioritizing yourself. Well, first of all, there are the emotional costs, right? You become frustrated, you may become depressed, anxious, upset all the time, resentful. All those are very real things, and I've seen them. I've seen them in other people. I've seen them in myself. Then there are the relational costs. So affecting your relationships with the people that you love and that you care about. Even relationships with the people that you work with. Because again, there comes the resentfulness. There comes the frustration. And that affects how you interact with those people. And then it's the physical costs. High blood pressure, high cortisol leading to um, weight gain, especially in the tummy area with us women. Feeling stressed, high strung all the time, tense muscles, body aches, headaches, stomach issues. These are real things that happen. So we have to find, and I started with it and I mentioned it again, small things that can have a big impact, right? So what about handling the guilt that comes from prioritizing? Because guilt is going to come, right? There are no two ways about it. I don't want to fool you or pretend that, just do what I tell you to do or follow my advice and everything is going to be hunky-dory. It will, if you're not somebody who's used to prioritizing yourself or setting boundaries, some guilt is going to come. So how do you deal with that? Well, you remind yourself that you need to prioritize yourself. You remind the other person that, well, you need to prioritize yourself. And maybe you should suggest to them that they prioritize themselves as well. because they may be somebody who is a chronic people pleaser as well. That may be why they're getting on you because somebody may be on them and know they're coming to you to help them out. Yeah, the guilt is real. That there's no two ways about it. But there's getting around it. There's getting past it. It can be very fleeting. Trust me. You don't have to wallow in it at all. The guilt of feeling as though you're disappointing somebody by saying no. The guilt of feeling that somebody's going to think that you're a bad team member at work because you said that your plate is already too full. You know, it's interesting. The other day, and I hope I remember it correctly, but the other day I was out in a park and these two ladies were walking for exercise and I could hear their conversation because they were talking quite loudly. And one lady said, she said to her boss, "You're trying to serve me a full meal on a dessert plate and it cannot work." And it made so much sense when she said it. And I was like, that is so brilliant. And I think, like, I applauded her silently for having the gumption to stand up for herself in that regard. Because many of us don't. Many of us just take whatever is thrown at us and deal with it somehow. And again, feel resentful and frustrated and then call one of our friends to vent about it. But it does not have to be that way. And the other thing, when I heard that little bit of that conversation that I thought about was very often, yeah, things are piled onto our plates, top, 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 top up, top up, top up, top up. And we just deal with it, right? We don't tell the person who keeps bringing more stuff or the persons who keep bringing more stuff that our plate is full already. We just manage through. How is somebody to know that you're struggling or that you need help unless you say something? I think a big problem amongst humanity is that many of us don't communicate well. We expect people to be mind readers, but that's not fair. And truthfully, if somebody keeps coming and giving you lots of tasks to do and you manage to get through them quite well without complaining, well, you don't complain to them. You complain to people that have your friends, your family, people who are not in that space, but you get it done, they will think that all is well. So that's why you need to speak up. That's why you need to speak up. All right. So I want to give you a short guided reflection exercise and just listen to me. I'm going to tell you what to do. I'm going to ask you some questions for you to reflect on quietly. And yeah, hopefully it brings some awareness to you. Please ignore my dogs. Okay, so I want you to sit comfortably and breathe 3 slow, deep breaths. You can inhale, hold it, now exhale. Again, inhale, hold it, now exhale. One more time. Inhale, hold it, now exhale. Ask yourself, what one small thing would make my tomorrow easier if I chose it for myself? What one small thing would make my tomorrow easier if I chose it for myself? I'll let you think about that for a minute. The next question is, what's one boundary that I can set this week? One sentence I can actually say. What's one boundary I can set this week? One sentence I can actually say. And remember, a boundary, as I said, doesn't have to be a no. It can be a later. So something like, I can't take it on right now, but I can help you find someone else who may be able to, or I can help you find an alternative, or I need to focus on one thing this week. Can we revisit this next week, Monday? And always don't allow your guilt to be unrealistic in your boundary setting. And by that, I mean, sometimes you do it halfway. So you may say, like in the example I gave, I need to focus on whatever this week. Can we revisit this on Monday? But you know very well that whatever you're working on isn't going to be finished until 2 Mondays from now. So just say that, right? Don't allow your guilt to make promises that you really can't keep. So I want to leave you guys with a challenge for the next 7 days. And I want you to choose one 20-minute non-negotiable for yourself each day. It doesn't have to be the same thing every day, but choose one non-negotiable thing for you for each day. And this is the thing that you are doing. Remember that small thing with big changes that acts as a show that you are prioritizing yourself. So some examples, you can insist that you go walking for 20 minutes. Take a walk for 20 minutes on any of those days or a number of those days. As I said, that you don't have to do the same thing every day. If that's what works for you, then fine. But if you want to switch it up, but just 20 minutes of every day for the next 7 days, and promise me that you're going to stick to it. It could be a digital detox where you switch your phone off for that 20 minutes. It could be to sit and read your Bible. That's certainly something that I do every day for at least 20 minutes in the morning. It could be listening to your favorite type of music. It could be sitting and reading a chapter in a book that you've been meaning to get back to. It could be locking yourself in your closet just for a little bit of quiet. Whatever it is that you feel that you need. And each day ask yourself, what do I need today that I can give myself, especially in that 20 minutes that Leslie told me about? And I want to hear how it goes for you. I really, really do. So I want you to either, you can leave a comment on my Substack, or you can email me, whichever you prefer. My Substack handle is Leslie Reese, LesleyReece. If you're not listening to this on Substack, because it will be available elsewhere as well. But I really want to hear your feedback. I absolutely do. no matter when you hear this episode, if you hear this episode 5 years from now, I really do want to hear your feedback and how it went for you. And with respect to boundary setting and making yourself a priority, I actually wrote a book called The Self-Care Manual That You Didn't Know You Needed. It's an ebook. It's a short book, but very, very informative, very helpful. Readers have told me it felt like having a mini coach in their pocket. Trust me when I say it is going to change your outlook on making yourself a priority. And it shows you exactly how you can do it in easy ways, in practical ways. I don't believe in giving people advice that is not practical for them, for their situation, for their life. So I encourage you to get it. It's available on my website, lesliereece.com, Lesley Reece, REECE.com/shop. You'll see it there. And as a special gift for listening to this episode of the podcast, if you enter code POD25, I'll give you 25% off. That's my gift to you. So thank you guys for listening. I am so honored to have been able to share with you in this space. I'm so excited to be back in the podcasting space. You have no idea. I'm so, so happy. And I hope that you'll join me for the next one. I'm sending a huge thank you for joining me on this episode. I hope that you'll tell others about it, reflect on it, and keep coming back for more. Bye for now.